Threshold COVID-19 insurance concepts businesses need to understand. First, every insurance policy is different. I cannot tell you how often I get a business that is in the same industry as the last business that I consulted, that has the same insurance carrier, and presents me their insurance policy for business interruption, which is usually a property policy. And that policy has different terms than my prior client. So the takeaway there is the specific policy language is what matters, and not what you hear about your insurance from third parties, and especially what you hear on the internet or in the news media. Mainly, it's because we believe that insurance companies are using the internet to put out their legal arguments and to try to have that influence decision makers. The legal arguments that are being presented are not 100% accurate, and they may not be applicable to your industry, to your type of policy, and in the state in which you're located. Throughout my presentation today, you'll see links that have been inserted, and I encourage everyone to click on those links for up-to-date information on these issues, on the related issues, and I hope you find those helpful. The key argument that most insurance companies are discussing in their news media and online opinions is regarding the term physical loss or damage to property. And they're asserting that COVID-19 is not creating a physical loss to the actual business's property. How can it? It's not destroying walls. It's not causing fires. What it's doing is it's impacting employees or it's impacting customers. It's not that simple. And what the insurance companies are beginning to see is a pushback to that position. And I'll get into that later on in my presentation. But the takeaway that every business should know is that depending on what state you're in, the law may be different on the physical loss or damage to property issue. And it also may be unique to your type of business. Some of the legal arguments regarding physical loss. The predominant type of argument that lawyers against the insurance companies are making relates to the civil authority shutdown orders. And the civil authority shutdown orders, whether it's the governor or here in Chicago, city of Chicago, they're saying that is not creating that is creating a physical loss to my property. I'm not able to access my property. That is one camp. The other camp, the other legal argument is the damage to property. In the past, we've not seen a crisis like COVID-19 in any of our lifetimes, at least I believe so. But in terms of the legal environment, the last crisis that we saw that caused an uproar amongst the insurance sector and the interpretation of policies related to asbestos. And in those types of cases, the insurance companies argued that there's no damage to the property. Asbestos might have been in the air in a building, but and that didn't create damage to property. Asbestos is only damage to property if you disturb it and cause it to rise in the air. Well, prior court decisions came out and said, no, the mere presence of asbestos did create damage to property. So that's the type of contrary legal arguments that the insurance companies are being faced with. Then the other issue we have is whether you're a fan of the President of the United States or not. He came out in a press briefing on April 10th, 2020, and said, with regard to businesses, when they finally need it, insurance companies say we're not going to give it. And he's talking about business interruption insurance. He says, we cannot let that happen. When you have the President of the United States coming out and saying that, who is the chief executive, who can influence policy, and the bottom line is laws impacting insurance are being changed on the federal, state, and the local government level. Policy interpretations are being challenged in the courts. Already, to date, new laws have passed. There's at least over 50 bills at the federal level, including a bill that was modeled after the post 9/11 bill, and that is called the Pandemic Risk Insurance Act of 2020. And that's widely to shield large and small businesses against the ravages of the pandemic that we're facing. At the state level, given your state, there's over 30 states. Your state is probably one of them. Since I drafted this presentation a few weeks ago, the number of states probably has increased, but at the time, over 30 had already passed unique laws to respond to the crisis. Some of those related to health insurance, others related to potentially business insurance. On top of that, almost all states have additional laws that are pending in their legislatures due to the crisis. Some of the ones that are particularly relevant to today's presentation and potentially to your business are the ones that were pending in Ohio, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. Those are bills that are threatening to make business interruption coverage mandatory for COVID-19 claims. And then on top of the legislatures, you also have the insurance regulators in each state. And the insurance regulators are rolling out guidance and modifications to existing insurance plans, and they're advising insurance companies that what they have to do. So what does this all mean? Well, the insurers have come back with their main arguments against these retroactive types of new laws. And so they'll be overwhelmed with the amount of claims, and they would need their own federal bailout. They're also arguing that insurance policies are contracts at the time they're written. This is what both parties agreed to. We did not agree to these new laws, and therefore, any type of COVID-19 coverage was not meant to be included at the time of the issuance of the policy. Well, the problem that insurance companies are going to have with that is within the policy, there is typically, and again, remember, the main theme here is read your policy, read your policy, read your policy. But there's a conformity of statute term, and the conformity of statute term states if the law of the state that applies to this insurance policy is contrary to what's stated in the insurance policy, the law of the state will control. So those are things to keep in mind. And what's going on in the courts? Well, I'm a litigator by nature. For over 20 years, I've litigated different types of commercial litigation, but I started in insurance defense and insurance coverage, and have consistently advised clients on insurance issues. And I've litigated and I'm litigating currently in the courts over insurance issues. And I will say, in my experience, I have not seen such a large influx of filings in the different states, in the different industries. And it's only been, probably as of this broadcast, within 30 days of the, within 60 days of the crisis. Here in the Midwest, we have lawsuits that have been brought by restaurant and theater owners. We have dental offices. We have class actions being threatened by plush toy manufacturers. In the East, there's scuba shops that have filed business interruption coverage claims. There are sports facilities, obviously many manufacturers and many different types of bars and prominent restaurants. And I cannot stress enough that this is not normal for litigators to see this scope of litigation and how it's affected so many different industries. So I encourage, if you're a business owner, I encourage you to call, your trusted advisor to talk about these issues, to see if you're one of those industries that's been impacted. Don't just take what's on the internet. Talk to an experienced professional. So amid this backdrop of the new laws coming out, the president of the United States saying there must be mandatory coverage, the legal battles in the courts across, probably all 50 states or almost all 50 states. What do you do in all this uncertainty? Well, it's a very simple answer, and I have yet to have said to a client the opposite to the following advice I'm going to make right now, which is make the claim. Whatever your business is, if you have a property policy with business interruption coverage, especially, make the claim. There should be no harm in doing so. Talk to your insurance broker.